All right, so today we're going to talk about trigonometry. We're going to start with right triangles, and you should have learned about SOHCAHTOA in geometry. So SOHCAHTOA is going to be our famous mathematical princess, SOHCAHTOA. So the spelling of her name is really important because S stands for sine, O stands for opposite. So sine is opposite over H stands for hypotenuse. So hypotenuse. Cosine, AH. So cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent, OA, is going to be opposite over adjacent. Now, these new words that you see below here, CSC, SEC, and COT, this CSC is cosecant, SEC is secant, and COT is cotangent. So these are basically just the reciprocal of sine, cosine, and tangent. So cosecant is going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Secant is going to be hypotenuse over adjacent. And cotangent is going to be adjacent over opposite. Now the way that you find cotangent, secant, and cosecant is by first finding the tangent, cosine, and sine, and then you just flip the fraction. Cosecant, secant, and cotangent. How can you remember what they go with? Sine and cosecant, cosine and secant, tangent and cotangent. So it's pretty obvious that tangent and cotangent go together because they both have the word tangent. But a lot of people want to put the cosine and the cosecant together. But what you need is one co for each pair. So cosecant and sine, secant and cosine, cotangent and tangent. Now, what does opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent mean? We're dealing with right triangles here, so we're going to have a right angle, and then you're going to have angle, this circle with a line in the middle, that's called theta. That's how we'll represent our angles. So once you have your theta, your hypotenuse is always across from the right triangle or the right angle. Your hypotenuse is always the longest side. Now, how can you tell the difference between what's the adjacent side and what's the opposite side? I always tell my kids to draw a line identifying what the angle is. Your line is always going to go through the hypotenuse and the adjacent side. And then the side that's across from the angle, that's opposite of the angle, that's going to be your opposite side. Now, your angle is going to be switching places. So if we had a right triangle and we had the theta up here, my hypotenuse is still the same. It's always across from that right angle. But in this particular case, draw that line, my adjacent side is now moving over here, and my opposite side is on the bottom. So if we look here at example 1, this is basic trigonometry, basic right triangle trig. We're given that the sine of theta is 5 over 13. So we can see that right here. We have my angle theta. The opposite side, the side across from theta, that's the 5. And then the 13 is the hypotenuse. And if you remember that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, that's where the 5 over 13 is coming from. So before you can do anything here, what you need to do is you need to figure out the value of this adjacent side. So we're going to go ahead and use the Pythagorean theorem. Remember, that is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So your c squared is always your hypotenuse. So 5 squared plus b squared equals 13 squared. Evaluate those. 25 plus b squared equals 169. Subtract that 25 from each side. You're going to get that b squared equals 144, which means b is 12. So b here is 12. So now when I'm trying to figure out what my sine, cosine, and tangent are, I'm going to just use my SOHCAHTOA, my princess. So SOHCAHTOA. We can write that down so we can reference it. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That was actually given to us in our problem, so that's 5 over 13. Cosine, A over H, so 12 over 13 because 12 is my adjacent side, 13 is my hypotenuse. And then tangent is opposite over adjacent, so 5 over 12. To find cosecant, secant, and cotangent, sine goes with cosecant because remember, each pair needs a co. You're just going to flip the fraction, 13 divided by 5. Secant and cosine go together. There's just one co, 13 divided by 12. And then tangent and cotangent go together, 12 over 5.